Welcome everyone to Friday Live at 5. Again this week I'm going to be reviewing the subject that I did with my class in Dubuque on Tuesday, and that was Étretat in Normandy. This is the cliff that Monet painted from the beach on the other side there. But this, I thought, offered some interesting degrees of difficulty that they had not yet encountered in learning watercolor. They're all beginners. And unfortunately, I underestimated the amount of time, or overestimated maybe, the amount of time it would take to complete this image. And not all of them got to finish it. So hopefully they can watch today and see what we would do. And I apologize for that, but at the same time, I learned a few things from them that really helps me understand how people who are beginning artists see differently and relate to images differently than seasoned artists. So that helps me teach that kind of thing going forward. So first things first, we're going to draw. We have always looked for our key horizontals and our key verticals. We have a couple of key verticals here. The cliffs themselves. The horizontal of the actual horizon is very, very distant and very fuzzy. And I'm not actually going to make a mark for that. I'm going to try and paint it. And we will see when we use the beaded wash technique how we'll execute that. But the cliffs here, this is an obvious subject. And what I've discovered is that beginning painters, landscape is sometimes difficult because it's a collection of just nondescript, abstract shapes, and they're not particular things, particularly when you're at a distance like this. But we can relate to this in sort of solid geometrics. Basically, we've got a rectangle here with a flying buttress and a cone. Hi, Michael. So, first things first, where is it? That vertical is a little bit to the right of center, so I'm going to get a line in there a little bit right of center. And its bottom is a little bit above center, so there's its bottom. So its top is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Hi. It's pretty close to the top there. So that we have a rectangle over here, and then we have a diagonal that makes it down to about the 20% mark. Like so. And then we have it's this dunce cap, and the first thing we want to look for is where's the bottom of this in relationship to the bottom of that? Well, it's a little bit below it. This is a little bit above it. So it's going to be somewhere in here. And where's the top of this in relationship to the top of that? Well, it's about 2/3, 3/4 of the way up. So it's going to be about here. And then where is this, the center line through it? Vertical center line. 1, 2, 3. It's about at the quarter mark. Now I'm going to start with a cone shape, but then I'm going to refine it. And then I'm going to find this flying buttress. You know, it's the top of that thing is above the top of this thing. And I'm going to darken these lines so we can see them later. And it comes down at something of an angle. and then goes straight. And the bottom of this is a little above the bottom of that. So we don't want to bring it down to here. We want to bring it to about there. Now, if you can find a shape in here that reminds you of something like the negative shape, if it looks like an airplane tail, if that helps, use that. Now, I've got my basic shapes, my basic geometric shapes in there, and then I also have a very distant cliff. Like so. Now let's make this a little better. There's a kind of a notch in here. This is not, there's a bit of a down and notch over here. Let's refine this shape. We find where it is first. Then we figure out how big is it. And then we look for the contour. So there's a little bit of a notch up here. And then this goes across, down, and over. Up, across, down before it gets to this part. And over. It almost looks like a Paris rooftop to me. Now, I really shouldn't be drawing that as dark as I am, because I think I would rather paint that. So I'm going to just lighten it. Since I feel like I've got it where I want it, I always make sure I've got the right line before I erase the bad line. And this needs to come out a little bit farther. In this, let's refine the shape of this. That versus that. That's a little steeper angle than that. So now notice that there's a bit, it's not dead flat like that. There's a little bit of a, okay, so we've got our good lines. Let's erase our bad lines. Oops. And then there's a, mindful of the fact that this thing changes. Now there's what's maybe not particularly apparent in this image is that this face of the cliff goes like this, and then it goes like this, and then it goes like that. Oops. And now there's a slight shadow bit here and a slight illuminated portion here. And if you look at the whole of it, it basically falls into an upside down triangle. So I'm going to find that. And then I'm going to find the line of this. Now, this greenery, this vegetation that's growing on top of the cliff there kind of comes down. Hello, Charles. And like that. Goes across, comes down. You know, and again, look at that. There's a triangular shape. Look for the basic geometrics. and then refine them into what we do. Don't go looking for the ups and downs, ins and outs of those contours, because they will inevitably wind up running off the page and being incorrectly proportioned and cause you all manner of trouble that you don't want. Okay, so let's deepen up some of these lines, and then we're going to plan our washes. Our dunce cap shaped protrusion there. Hold your pencil against it. Swing your body across. Oh, look at that. I need to go much steeper on that beach. And I want to be very careful with that headland back there because I want it to be very pale and distant. So I think I'm done with that. I think I'm done with my drawing. And now I want to plan my washes. Where's it? Get a big mop brush. Get it all wet. Let's see. Let's first take the eraser and make sure we've taken out all the lines that we don't want, because once you put paint over them, it's kind of hard to erase them after that. So ultramarine blue, 2 Prussian blues because I accidentally squeezed Prussian blue on top of my ultramarine, bright yellow, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, naphthol red, alizarin crimson. So the way I'm going to execute this is we've got a transition in these blues. It goes from a kind of an ultramarine blue to some greener blues over here, and it goes from being lighter to almost white. Not quite white because this is brighter, down to these darker blues. So the first thing I think I should do is mix up a big general puddle of ultramarine blue that I can modify with water to make it lighter, and Prussian blue to make it greener, and more of either pigment to make it darker. But the mix, because I want to do a beaded wash, needs to be very runny. So when I tip it on the palette, it runs. Let's get some of that. Yeah. We don't have to be super dark. We just need to be a little bit off the dark. So over here, I'm going to get a little bit of the Prussian, and actually at the horizon, it is rather greenish, and then it goes to the ultramarine. So, oh heck. A lot of water, very runny, both will run. And then into that, I am going to mix more of each pigment. And the added degree of difficulty here is in previously all the subjects you've been able to paint through because the thing on top is darker. But now we have to paint around because the thing here in places is lighter. Now all of that is darker than anything up here, so I can paint right through that. I can kind of miss in here if I'm a little sloppy, but this I have to be careful about. So here we go. Now, how am I going to get that very, very, very light background? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with water and the very slightest amount of pigment. Basically, I'm almost going to be painting water for that first stroke. But I'm going to try and keep it straight. I'm going to rinse that brush, blot it a bit, and then I'm going to go for the paint. Coming up underneath that bead, painting through that thing back there. I don't have to worry if I get a little bit in this green because that's darker, right? So keeping my bead, this I do have to be careful of. Now you can start the progression and cover your shape nicely. Let's start adding pigment. But I have to watch this thing. Now oh look at, I'm starving my bead. I shouldn't do that. That bead waits for me on one side while I paint the other side. Whoops. Got it in here too, don't I? So these beads are waiting for me while I paint between the thing. I'm going to start introducing some Prussian because it's getting to be a greener blue. I can come down here, greener blue, come down here. Oh, I'm getting a little bit of a, oh, shouldn't do that, shouldn't go back. Shouldn't starve my bead either. Make sure that bead is loaded. Look at that. See, now we got a nice bead we can work off of. Now we need to get a lot greener now. So let's just get over here and make a greener blue with the Prussian. Come up underneath, catch it. Oh, don't starve it. Get some more Prussian, some more water, some more Prussian. If you hit your beach, don't worry. And you can leave a little bit of white for that breaking water on the beach there. So more Prussian, getting greener. Don't starve the bead. Now, I've got a hard line there because I fouled up, but one of the nice things about this is that there are waves which go at a bit of a diagonal. So let's keep going, getting darker and greener. Prussian. Very runny still. Keep a bead. Greener. Let's maybe even throw in a little bit of yellow. Really start getting green. Leaving a bit of white over here for the breaking water. A little more yellow. Well, that's a hard line, but we can fix that. More of this. Let's get very green. And this, we sort of need to dry. So I'm rinsing my brush, squeezing it out, and then I'm going to make sure I haven't got any excess collecting at the bottom, which might go back uphill. Making a mess of my floor here, but have to be in the living room. So I'm going to mute this and then we're going to dry it. Where is it? Where's my, there it is. Okay, now the usual, we're going to maintain the usual sequence in watercolor, which is light to dark. So out of this blue over here, I'm going to add a little bit of the alizarin crimson, very small amount. Notice that I pack my paint to the back of these slanted wells. That's so when I need a light mix of the paint, I can get it from the front. And if I need a dark mix of the paint, I can get it from the back. A lot of times I see people putting a glob of paint up here. And what happens is it dries out. Now this paint that's packed into that corner back there, the top of it dries out, but everything behind that is still moist, so it wets up very easily. So put your paint to the back. So for this shadow color, I need a purplish kind of mix, which means a little bit of this red to get a purple mix. And I'm going to do a tester down here. That looks okay. So I'm going to try and stay within my triangle and then come up and get some of these things in the middle of that triangle and then make it a darker purple as I go over here. And I'm going to paint through to the beach because you see that's sort of purplish too, and it's darker, so it doesn't matter. A little bit of that red. Okay. All of that flying buttress thing is kind of in shadow because it's this side of the cliff is shading it. I'm going to put a little more red, a little more blue. Oh, that's too much blue. So put some more red and some water. I do need to get more purplish as I go to the left here, or to the right, John. So I'm just going to whack it in there. And we are, of course, at the holy mess stage. Okay, more red, more blue. You could go into your other red to get a duller purple. And you could actually even go into some of your burnt sienna to get a more neutral purple. Let's do that. So that this thing does not look the same all along its length. So I'm going to get the beach there. I'm going to touch in here. A few spots here and there. So that what I'm doing now is runny paint into a wet surface. So it has a tendency to disperse rather and disappear because there's water on the surface of that paper. Okay, let's leave that for the moment and go over to our dunce cap thingy. I overshot that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some clear water. Squeeze it out of the brush. And I'm going to try to recover that shape, because ultramarine blue is a very good lifter. Let's get a napkin and see if I can. Yeah, that's a little better. I'm probably going to switch to the the smaller brush at some point. I want a different kind of shadow color over here. This whole thing seems to be more brightly illuminated than that. So perhaps I will use this slightly runny bluish thing for the headland back here. And rinse that out. That came out kind of hard. I changed too hard there, but we'll fix that. Yeah, I could soften some of this edge too. And just let it bleed. Now I need a gray that's a little warmer. So I'm going to get some of that and some of the burnt sienna. Do a tester. Oh, that's a little better. Maybe even a little bit of yellow ochre to get the left side of this thing. Now let's switch to the smaller brush. The number 10, number 12 round sort of brush. I'm going to work out of this puddle here that was greenish. I'm going to get a little more of the two blues. I'm going a little bit darker now. I'm going to execute that bit there. So I'm going to get some yellow ochre because I don't want a brilliant green. I want a dull green. Let's do a tester. A little more yellow ochre. Maybe even a bit of the burnt sienna. Try to execute this in a nice, strong, complete stroke. Because we want to get it done rather quickly. For this, you'll see why. It kind of don't worry about those yet. Dipping into that ultramarine blue for a slower move. You see, this is slow. It's great. I'm going to get some of these ravine areas in the wet surface of the green that I just applied. So along there, maybe that and a little bit more yellow ochre for a medium version of the two colors I've just used, and where I I see it going something like that, or that, or that. Squinting, 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 squinting. Where is it? How big is it? Then, what shape is it? Okay. Now, back into that bluish gray with a little bit of this alizarin, kind of a, again, a light. I'm going to try to suggest some of these. The lower portion of this flying buttress type thing is a little darker. There are some sort of striations. The lower portion of this is a little bit darker. So ultramarine, a little bit of alizarin. Shouldn't be any white there. It's kind of dark. Not on the back side because it's in shadow. And there's a kind of a line of scummy stuff where it meets the water line. Same over here. A little more water in this mix. And see if we can and then some of this greenish scummy stuff right where it meets the water line. Same here. Don't want any white there. Same here. Same, oh yeah, let's get lots of that. Yellow ochre, burnt sienna, blue, very dull green. So we're going from larger marks to smaller marks. Rinsing that brush good. Getting some of this stuff. And there are a few of these layers sort of show up. I'm squinting to see where they really appear and where they disappear. Now here, they're going like this. But over here, they're going like this. So we have to go a different angle. And that edge is kind of dark. And there are some brownish sort of striations on this too. Now we're going to refine this down here coming up. But right now, I think the thing that I need to do most is go back to the bigger brush and put some burnt sienna and some ultramarine blue and some alizarin and maybe a little more ultramarine blue to make a beach color. It's pretty dark over here. If that's too dark, rinse your brush and bring water to it. If it's still too dark, rinse your brush and take some of it out, because that's why they call them mops. Now, let's dry this. There should be no white here. Let's get rid of that. Let's dry this. All right, so I'm looking at it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to erase any stray pencil lines in the white. And then I'm going to look at it and I'm going to say, well, doggone it. Needs to be a little darker and bluer up here. Maybe there could be some more bluishness in here. Maybe a little bit on there. So it is possible to reglaze something. And I think I might want to soften that bit too. So I'm going for some clear water. And I'm going to soften that line. So putting water to either side of it and tapering it down so it doesn't stay in just one spot. Now, that's going to kind of dry up while I mix another blue, and then I'm going to, well, let's dry it again. Safe thing is when you do a glaze, always dry it. A glaze is always a wet or runny mix of paint applied to a dry surface which has previously been painted with another color. So I'm just going to take some ultramarine, make a runny mix, and then I think I'm going to have to add some Prussian to it as I come down here. But I do need to maintain a bead again. So to keep that line uber soft, I am going to have to start with bluish water and then come underneath it with this. Keep a bead, John, keep a bead. Oh goodness, I didn't mix enough. Runny mix. Keep a bead. Bead will wait for you. The bead abides. Switch to the greener blue. You can execute a narrow area like that as long as you keep a bead at the bottom. Don't starve it. Now, I am going to pull water across here. And then paint over here. That's better. But I'm starting to starve my bead. I need to be very careful. I'm going to leave some of this behind, the original color. So that I can mimic the motion of the water. Some of it's shallow, some of it's lighter. And then over here, I'm going to just bring water over to make it a soft transition. Now, let's dry that. Thank you, Anthony. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to try to create the smaller marks which create the interest. So I may need to, I'm going to do the biggest shapes first. I'm going to mix up a kind of turquoisey mix, which will be Prussian blue, a little bit of the bright yellow, more Prussian blue than bright yellow. Maybe some of the ultramarine. I'm going to do that. Chester. Okay, I think I probably should mix more. Always mix more than you think you're going to need. And then you'll have something you can use elsewhere later. Well, it'd have to be out there, wouldn't it? Now, I'm going to rinse that brush, and I am going to soften that business, squeeze it out a bit, come to the edge of it to give that water, the paint, a place to travel. Now the reflection here, we got some of that color going right at the bottom. And then if we add some water and some more yellow and come underneath it, can create this reflection. Now there's more than one way to do this. I'm going to rinse that brush, get some water, and tease it down. So what I'm doing is I'm putting water underneath it so it has a place to swim into, and I could feed more in from the top. Alternatively, same here. Alternatively, you can put water in and then feed paint in. Yeah, the hair dryer, and then there's the situation where what do you do outside? Well, actually the wind will typically do what you need to do. So to illustrate what I was talking about there, I'm going to take this damp brush and I'm going to pull underneath here so the surface is damp. And then I'm going to take thicker paint and I'm going to feed it into that wet spot to make a reflection that way. Now clearly I need to make the beach darker, so green will not be the right color, so I'm rinsing, I'm getting some more of this, and looks like there's a bit of shadow coming out of that too. And I can see I also need to make portions of this darker because this face has a little less light than that face. So ultramarine, alizarin crimson. We're doing another glaze. Glazing is a legit thing. Okay, that looks a little darker and a little more like it ought to be. Over here, I think I need to have a little bit more structure. Here too. Let's feed that into that reflection. Down here should be dark. None of that should be illuminated. Certain faces of this should get more. At this point, let's pull some tape off. Would I use that value along the cliffside? I will use whatever value gets me to where I think it looks like what I want. So maybe let's try some ultramarine blue burnt sienna, and while this is wet, place thicker paint into a damp surface to get a soft but somewhat distinct edge. There's a dark bit there somewhere. Let's see. Oh, yeah, there's something up here. There. Now I'm going to mix a little yellow ochre into this to get an off green. Yeah, there we go. It's getting closer. Getting close. There is some green over here, but I'm going to be very careful about that because it could stand out on its own. And there's some scummy green along here. Yep. And here. Something dripped there. I don't know what I did. That was my mistake. That area is not still doing this area here. There's some, of course, water, oil or acrylic. You could execute this so simply and not worry about it. Scrape it off if it doesn't look right, and yeah, good point, Anthony. What are the well, okay, number one, where is it? Number two, how big is it? Then, number three, we go into the shape, the contour. And I've probably used this illustration before, but if I were to paint your portrait and then show it to people who don't know you, I could get the color of your nose wrong. I could, completely get that wrong. I could get the shape of your nose wrong. I could get the size of your nose wrong. But if I don't get your nose where your nose belongs, people will immediately know that I've blown it. Or they'll think that I've gone into my Cubist period or something. So where is it is the most important thing. How big is it is the next most important thing. Then the shape. And most people, I find, they kind of rush in, try to get the shape or the contour of the thing too early. And they wind up running off the page, or it's proportionately inaccurate, or all manner of problems. So, yeah, it was critical to get this up over here in the right corner at the top, not down here in the middle or too far over. And even I can see even now some slight inaccuracies of where I put it, but the good news is you don't have to have it to aerospace tolerances. You can, as long as you're in the ballpark, you're going to be doing good. So let's detape and see what we get. Yeah, we could throw in some water lines, I think, with the bigger brush. Get some of this blue here. Right. Some lines like that. Always make them go edge to edge, if you can. They look like they're going off the page. You're gonna get credit for all the space that the viewer thinks is happening over there, even though you haven't painted a thing. So let's put a reflection underneath this. Careful. That should probably be going horizontally. Yeah. All right, I shouldn't fool with it anymore. Okay, but the thing that I wanted to get across this week was planning the wash. Or planning the painting, planning the sequence of the painting. Yeah, we could fool around in here. We could still do some glazing. Some very, very, very pale yellow ochre. On parts of this to make it look a little warmer. And parts of this to make it look a little less white. And maybe some slightly darker blue on that headland back there, because it needs to stick up above the horizon. And just stuff like that. So that's that. Now we could also get the white gouache out. Let's do it. We got all night. I'm still going to cook something too. Let's make a little, sticking right into, how many brushes do I use? That's a good question. I typically use a large brush and a small brush, and then I might go to a rigger if I need like utility lines or something like that. It's the bigger brush to lay down the washes or do the glazing, the smaller brush like this to do the smaller marks. So let's have a little bit of splashy water to the left of these two things. And what I find is if you get the gouache right out of the tube, it will dry to a matte surface and with a reflectivity similar to the paper itself, although it's not as white as the paper. If you dilute it with water, then it gets that gray that just sort of doesn't work and always looks like a fix. I'm using it as a positive mark. It's a positive stroke. I'm trying to get you just, and probably the less I do, the better. Water is water, and it just does so much. Rounds, I tend to prefer rounds. I'll tell you why. Because, a lot of times you see those flat chisel-shaped brushes, and people think, oh, that's going to cover a lot of ground. They actually don't, because they tend to be very short hairs and a very thin cross-section. They'd be a thin cross-section, actually less than that. And then if you think about it, what holds the liquid? If you need to get a lot of paint down, what holds the liquid? It's the space, the capillary action of the spaces between the hairs. So the longer the hairs and the more of them you got, the more paint you're going to carry. And the thing about a round is you can, when you press down, it becomes a wide brush. But when you pick up, you get onto the point. So you can execute a complicated shape a little more easily than a chisel-shaped brush. Chisel-shaped brush, nothing against them. They're excellent for when you need to execute like a squarish shape, like a window or a door or something like that. They're brilliant for that. You have to use a little more finesse with a round to get those sort of marks. They can be done. But on the whole, a round brush is going to carry way more paint than one of those chisel-shaped brushes. So, okay, to review what we were doing here, plan the sequence of what you're doing. The general sequence is lighter to darker, wetter to drier, larger to smaller. And if you need to get a very hazy, faraway line, you can start with sort of just dirty tinted water and then switch to paint. And the bead will give you the transition, the smooth transition that you need.